Oh my God, we are back with yet another episode of Grindhouse Chic. As always, I am Robert Schneider, and with me is Matt Armstrong, and for the second week in a row, the on time, Brian Baldwin. Guys, what has been going on this week? What purchases have you made? What movies have you seen? Have you seen anything that excited you?
Today was a good one. I went and watched Barbarian finally. I was
About
speaking
time.
to you, Robert, about that. I fucking love that movie, and I cannot recommend it enough, and I won't say another word about it.
I will say what I have said is the best Airbnb horror movie that takes place in Detroit that I've seen this year.
It was a great theater experience. Number one, I want to point out that there was actually, it was pretty full. It wasn't sold out, but it was pretty full for a mid-afternoon showing. And it's a great one to watch with an audience. There was a lot of different reactions and a lot of awkward, nervous laughter that I was just sitting there like, wow, I love this. Keep going. It seemed to be a hit.
I will spoil one thing in the movie that one thing that really pissed me off is when she was parking in downtown Detroit in front of the Rock Financial Building, which is where she went in and had the coffee, because that was like a block from where I worked when I lived in Detroit. You can't park there. There is no fucking street parking.
Nice.
I mean, the majority of the movie was filmed in Bulgaria. I'm pretty sure the exterior scene with the Pacific Coast Highway and downtown Detroit and the interior of the building in Detroit were all that was filmed in this country. They could have just replicated both of those in Bulgaria, which is like the Vancouver of Europe.
Okay, Matt, have you seen it?
Not yet. No, I was. A couple of my friends went to see it on Tuesday, but I just couldn't make it.
Yeah,
lame. You should have skipped it.
Yeah,
I've got once you do, class now.
Oh, you're like school during Thanksgiving, Matt. No class.
Are you an honor student by day and a hooker by night?
I wish.
Oh, if Matt was a Hollywood hooker by night, he'd be one broke hooker.
I could probably get a couple tricks in.
Yeah, he gets the money from him. He's like, okay, but I picked the film. What?
The next time I know I'm going to the theater is for the Alamo Drafthouse, Dismember the Alamo, on Saturday the 29th. I'm pretty excited by it. 4 movies.
You know what they're showing?
As long as they show at least 2 movies that I haven't seen before, I'm okay with it. But like last year, they showed Boarding House and Bubba Hotep. I was very disappointed about Bubba Hotep because I've seen that so many times.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I've seen it with an audience, and I think were as bored as I was by it. I mean,
it was a movie. I loved it the first time I watched it, but I found myself. I don't think I could go as far as to say I think it's a bad movie, or because it's not. It just doesn't have a tremendous amount of rewatchability for me.
Did that one come out theatrically?
I don't
remember.
Think so. I remember I bought it on DVD when it came out from Anchor Bay. No, it did come out because I was living in Minneapolis at the time, going to grad school, and I remember my friend Taki and her then boyfriend talking about seeing it at the whatever they're a independent film chain owned by Mark Cuban. And now I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
but it was playing at one of the theaters in the neighborhood by the school. So, and I was excited because I'm a Bruce Campbell fan.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I haven't seen it in forever, but I feel like I enjoyed it when it first came out.
It's a slow burn of a film. it's not one of the Bruce Campbell performances where you just think of him being zany, and I mean he's playing like a 90-year-old Elvis.
Yeah. So when you go to this thing, it's all the movies are just a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I kind of knew they were going to play Boarding House because it is presented by AGFA, and that was just coming out. That it was just being released that week by Vinegar Syndrome. So I was hoping it was, because I was really excited to see it, and I loved that movie, as we talked about. But it was so much better with a theater for the first time. Otherwise, it would have probably been something I was like, it's good.
Yeah.
It's entertaining. But our friend Anson and I were talking about it this week. He's like, I hope they show Microwave Massacre, which is the title AGFA owns theatrically. And I would rather gouge my dick out than watch that film.
Yeah, thank you. You've seen that, haven't you, Matt?
Hold on. I can tell you.
Yeah, is it in my watch list?
Oh. Well, all I was going to say is I don't know why I watch it every year. I didn't last year. Steve and I were supposed to watch. Him and I are supposed to watch that together every year because we both hate it, and we're just hoping that one year it will just somehow click.
No, it won't click.
That movie will...
and Matt, it is not on your watch list.
Oh man.
What about now?
Why?
You guys really talked this up for me. I gotta check it out now.
I'm the same way though. If someone tells me like how bad and shitty a movie is, I'm like, challenge accepted. I will watch that.
So when Arrow released that, I was buying every Arrow film at the time, and I bought Microwave Massacre. I watched it, and I sold it back the next day.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I have it because I thought that Arrow had put it out.
It made me question Arrow, and now I long for the days when Arrow put out movies like Microwave Massacre.
Yeah,
you know, I just watched a new Arrow one that I picked up, and this kind of goes back to a conversation we were having last week about not paying enough attention and reading the material on the back. So it's a newer release called Two Witches. From the way that the slip is stylized and everything, I just kind of assumed we're looking at probably something like 70s, like later 70s. But no, it was a totally modern film. Now, I will say that I actually ended up enjoying it. It's not one that I'm like going to go tell everyone to check out, but it's if you do find yourself bored, Two Witches, I think it was a pretty well made attempt at a horror film for like a low budget film. It was fine. You know, the acting kind of sucked it. That was a first. The acting kind of, yeah, right. I think I need to start a band called The Suckted now. The acting was kind of shitty. It looked really cheap and just kind of digital and just weird. But anyway, yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, I wish had I read the back and looked at the year, I probably would have passed on it.
Arrow has done that a lot. I caught myself. One came out a few weeks ago called, I think not a few weeks ago, a few months ago, called The Stylist, and probably by a few months ago, it might have been last year. And it looks like an interesting movie, but I tend not to be a fan of horror movies that were made post 2000. It's very rare for me on that, and I'm going to rephrase it: independent horror movies made post 2000. And a lot of it is they don't have the budget, and by don't have the budget, they don't even have the budget of a $300,000 budget for a movie like some of the Sleepaway Camp movies have had. And
yeah, the Stylist actually played at the Knoxville Horror Film Festival last year, year before, something like that. Like time is meaningless. But yeah, I remember watching it, and I mean, I wasn't very impressed with it. I mean, I tried to keep an open mind, knowing that it was super low budget. I just kept thinking, like, God, this should have been a short film. And I'm pretty sure that I've read since then that it was intended to be a short film, But then somehow the financing and the idea of making it a feature length film came into play, and that's what they did. And in my opinion, you were left with about 50 minutes, if not even more, of just like, whoa, you could get rid of all of this.
I feel that about a lot of movies, and God, I never made a narrative feature of my own, so I'm coming out of this out of left field. But I think a lot of people, when they're writing a film, especially when they have no one with creative control over them, they don't think about pacing, they don't think about a million rewrites, and they don't think about what will make this a good horror film. Like I look at a lot of the stuff that Sean C. Phillips makes. Like he did a documentary about movie hoarders, movie collectors. It was over 2 hours long. In it, basically, so many of the subjects being interviewed said the same thing. Any good person with editing skills or knowing how to make a narrative out of the documentary could basically go, all right, this person said it. We don't have to have anyone else say the same fucking thing. And I find that like the same thing with a lot of horror films, that they don't know where their big beats are. Oh, we have a killer fish or a Sasquatch. I'm not trying to say anything about suburban Sasquatch here. I know that Sean C. Phillips made a Bigfoot movie, and I'd rather see something with a lot of craft and care, which I guess is why I don't like a lot of SOV films.
Ouch.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think next week I'll just show up at 10:30 again and let you get all this shit out of you.
So I have a question for you guys. I know all of you are watch a lot of horror movies during the month of October. How do you choose what you watch?
I kind of just look for those challenges to do because I feel like they make me oh, Brian's on the move. I feel like they kind of make me kind of branch out and watch things that I would have never have even known existed. So I've been pretty into that Hooptober challenge the past couple years. But other than that, it's just usually whatever's new or whatever pops up on like the streaming services. But I've been trying to stick with these challenges.
Brian, how about
finish one?
Brian, how about you?
Really, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it with me. I don't really have any kind of method. A lot of times I will find myself during October finding random streaming things, that I've never heard of, kind of like lower budget. And for whatever reason, this year I have been kind of gravitating towards newer films just to see. There are a few staples, and they're kind of the big ones that you would expect from everybody. Like I do watch Halloween every year. I do watch Texas Chainsaw, Friday the 13th, stuff like that. Yeah, it's just random. Like today, I went and I picked up Nightmares from Umbrella.
Ooh.
Yeah, exploitation film. It said basically that it's like a clone of Halloween, and it mentioned someone, Jenny Newman, who's in this, who was also in Hell Night, which made me think, oh shit, I've only seen like half of the film Hell Night, so I picked that up from 101.
There's a Scream Factory version.
I like the 101 packaging.
All right. Someone's bragging they have a region-free player.
Who's it? Oh, that's right.
Does anyone in this group not have one?
I don't have one.
I know. You need one.
No, my wallet says differently. Because I would buy a lot more, and I'm trying to be smart with my money. Like I can't buy everything I see. I felt guilty when I bought the 2 Cauldron releases this week.
I haven't kept up with them. The last ones that I got were the found footage films that they released there several months ago.
Um, not the
I don't.
not not the I didn't pick up the last wave, but the wave before it with the Clockwork Orange clone, which I can't remember the name of it, and Contraband. Both those movies were fantastic. Both those movies were fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, and the new one I've seen one of the films, and then the one that looks like a version of Rush Hour.
Hmm.
I had well a kung fu movie taking place in Italy. I've never seen that, but the trailer looked good, so I bought both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't necessarily a knock at the company for me per se. I found myself just like, I mean, hell, I still haven't even watched their second wave. Like they've just been fucking sitting there, which I've discussed. I like to a certain degree, but I mean that's been a minute now, and I just never find myself in the mood to watch them.
Well, I think Cauldron has some good releases, but unlike other companies, I don't feel the need to pick up everything they put out.
Yeah,
But
which these days I'm grateful for. If you guys are anything like me, I'm like, hell yeah, I don't care.
no, I
Keep
don't
I can
either.
keep the water on this month.
I mean, like with Vinegar Syndrome Prime, yeah, I'll keep on getting what they get until I'm like, the subscriptions aren't worth it, or when I start thinking, well, there's more that I don't like than what I like.
Mhm.
But going back to our Halloween viewing, so mine has become very weird this year. I've been very eclectic. Like I've been pulling stuff off the shelf. So on Friday night, I pulled off the VCI, the really bad VCI Santo set that came out last year, because I was looking for different horror movies, and I remember one of them was Santo versus La Lorna. But instead, I watched on that disc Santo versus Dr. Frankenstein, Santo and Blue Demon versus Dr. Frankenstein. And it might have been the dumbest movie I have ever seen. And I loved every second of it. The dubbing was so bad, but I loved every second.
Santo like the luchador?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Santo, and it had some pretty good wrestling matches in there as well.
I know the set you're talking about, but I've never seen any of those films. I don't
I-
own that one.
When I had cable, I would have Galavision, where they would show the Santo movies like every Saturday night after CMLL wrestling or AAA wrestling. I can't remember which one. And I don't speak Spanish, but I would watch those. And I'm like, these are the best movies ever. But then I'm going through my shelves, and I pulled out Sleepaway Camp 1, and I haven't seen that movie in years. And I forgot how good that movie was. It doesn't hold up today because the movie is wrong on so many different levels. But I'm watching. You both have seen it, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was my number
yeah.
one. That was my number one on my movie curating list, the marathon.
That's right. That's right. Watching it this time, I realized the ant is the most evil character ever in a film.
Hmm.
Wow. I'm just like, she's really messed up, and everything that happened in that movie was her fault.
I will say, just because you were saying how some of it doesn't hold up, I agree, but I found it really interesting. This wasn't that long ago, within maybe the last month or two, on some random movie Facebook group I'm a part of. I'm not sure which one it was, but that film got mentioned, and the person who was making the post was putting the feelers out there to talk to people in the trans community to see like if they found that movie to be offensive or anything, or was it and a tremendous amount of responses came in, and yeah, everyone just talked about how much they love the movie. Like even members of that community who the original poster may have thought would be offended by that, or it might upset them.
Yeah, I mean it's a dark it's a dark film. Also, that camp employs some of the most lecherous people ever.
Oh yeah, man.
Like
Yeah.
everyone who dies in that movie, I think probably deserved to die.
Hmm.
But no, like the cook, how the hell was he still employed? And the
Yeah.
owner of the camp was going to get together with Meg, and everyone knew about it. Like, that's okay. It's fine.
That one, I found it believable that she was at least of legal age. You know what I mean?
Was she?
I mean, I assume.
When I was in
Right?
camp, my counselors went from age 16 to 20 something.
I'm just saying it obviously wasn't. Well, no, it wasn't true. I'm sorry. I knew what I meant to say, but what I was about to say would probably get me steamrolled. He said what? No, all I was going to say is like, she clearly looks much older than like, you know, the Felissa Rose and the cook scene. You know what I mean? Like, I think she appeared to me to be like an of age teenager, like an 18, 19, 20 something.
Maybe I don't know. When I watched the special features, they were interviewing the main character, actress Felissa Rose, and she was really excited because the actress who played Meg was on All My Children, and she came onto the set on a limo. And I'm like, was she the most paid person in that film? Because she was like a soap star, which is really just one rung above porn actress.
Felissa Rose is like, she is so cool. I got to meet her at a local event. They were having a screening of Sleepaway Camp just right up the road from me. It was so cool. Right next to the dungeon where I talked to you guys about that super local place to me. Anyway, she was there and doing pictures and autographs. I got her to sign up my Scream Factory release of Sleepaway Camp. And dude, she was like so energetic and like genuinely wanted to talk to people. And I just thought it was so cool that like, that's really the only fame that she has is from being the kid in that movie. And years later, she's doing tours and getting to meet fans and shit. It's just, they had trivia. They had Sleepaway Camp trivia that night. And I was kicking ass, man. It came down to me, this other lady, and this little kid. Okay? That kid, if I ever have a child, I can only hope it ends up as cool as that kid, man. That dude knew fucking everything, man. I came in third, so I didn't get nothing. The woman,
you were beat by a little kid,
dude. No, the lady.
Shame.
Shut up! You would have lost too. This kid knew everything.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't know that much about Sleepaway Camp. I think I've seen it maybe 4 times, and I'm going to change that. Where I think that might be one of my regular Halloween viewing films. But it's a brutal film because kids actually die in that movie. Like, if you look at any of the Friday the 13th movies, kids don't die because there aren't any.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Except for Corey Feldman. But he didn't die. He was just emotionally scarred. But no, I mean, it like when
we're talking in real life.
No. The scene where the counselor came back to all the kids that were camping.
No, I was joking. He's definitely been emotionally scarred.
That guy. Yeah, Corey Feldman's fucked. But
sad, really.
So Sleepaway Camp 1 is great, and then you watch 2 and 3. I know they had a different director and different Angela, played by the great Pamela Springsteen, the lesser talented sister of Bruce Springsteen. But it felt like the director was embarrassed of what Angela was because they basically said, oh, she got a sex change and that was end of story. And whatever made the character unique in the first film was wiped away in the second and third.
Now, I must say,
sequels.
I love the second one. I mean, now it is a completely different tone. It is, that's a good one, I think, to laugh at with friends and stuff. It's just, cheesy. But it does have the um, outhouse scene was rather disgusting and vomit inducing.
It also had Renee Estevez in it, who is in two movies I watched this week, that and Intruder, which was a Sam Raimi produced film. And I didn't realize Renee Estevez was pretty cute. Oh, Intruder has possibly one of the best horror movie endings ever.
The name sounds so familiar. I'm gonna have to look to see if
Synapse or Synapse, however you pronounce it, released a really good version about 12 years ago, and
okay,
yeah, I cracked my copy open. But going back to Sleepaway Camp 3 is the worst of them because Angela Rapp's in it. and the first person she kills them by running them over with a garbage truck, which makes me wonder, where the fuck did Angela get a garbage truck? Who taught her to drive the garbage truck and operate it?
You've been through what she's been through, man. You just learn some stuff along the way.
I don't know.
When you're dumping people into boiling pots of water, boiling vats of water, you learn how to drive a garbage truck.
As far as we know, the cook did not die. He was just in severe shock.
I guess you're right. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'd like to think he died.
I you know what? For as creepy as he's out, a worse hell for him is being burned alive.
Yeah. Dude, that wasn't even the only part either. Like, do you remember when? I'm sorry, I know this is not a Sleepaway Camp discussion, but when they're like, when all the kids are showing up and a bunch of these guys who work, they're cooking the food and everything in the cafeteria, like all that shit coming out of his mouth. It's gross. I'm not even going to attempt to repeat it, but all that stuff about the kids and just, ugh, good Lord.
No, it was gross.
And they're all just standing there like, oh, that's good old, whatever. Oh, that's old Henry just being Henry.
He says the same shit every year. But as disgusting as he was the kitchen was slightly less disgusting with all the flies and fly tape that was around there. I was like, this is gross.
Yeah. What a movie to make you want to join a baseball team, though, huh?
Yeah. Oh, the kids say, all right. I want to say one more thing about part 2. Brian Patrick Clark, who played TK, might have had the greatest mullet in 80s horror film history.
Nice.
Fresh off his stint on 8 is Enough and General Hospital, he was in Sleepaway Camp 2 with the massive mullet. So, I think that might be a topic for an upcoming episode where we just talk about unnecessary sequels.
Oh, God, where to begin? Okay.
And I think what an unnecessary sequel is a movie that doesn't add anything to the story or totally contradicts the first film. But I guess that brings us into our discussion of,
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Of 1996. Wes Craven directed, Kevin Williamson written Scream, released by Miramax, now owned by Paramount, which I find funny. So, for those of you who have not seen a movie since 1995, Scream was the answer to the stagnant horror film market. By that point, horror films have become repetitive, where it was the same old of kids in every film making the same dumb mistakes. the same mistakes were like, don't go out of the house, stay in the house. No, go outside. But what Scream was an all-star cast of the hottest teen and early 20s actors in the anti-horror horror film. Basically there's murders in a town in Ohio starting on the anniversary of Sydney's mom's death. And there's a killer in a mask killing kids, talking to them on the telephone. I don't know really what to say about the plot because I'm sure everyone who watches this show has seen it before.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm just going to say I saw it the weekend it came out in 1996, and I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I remember seeing this really crappy United Artists Theater with a friend of mine, and we both walked out of it saying, holy shit. I don't know if we said holy shit, but we both couldn't stop talking about it, how that movie elevated the horror film to another. Yeah, it elevated horror films.
Ooh.
So I'd like to interject here real quick, and it's
go
just going
ahead,
to take a second, because I think it's fair to mention that one of the reasons this is being discussed is not just about Scream itself as a film, but the long argued, topic of did Scream ruin the slasher movie and do a lot of harm for the genre. So I just wanted to say that because I want to let Matt go fucking ham right now, and I'm gonna love it.
Before Matt does, I want to say something. I think the horror genre was already ruined by this point.
Which I have a point I want to mention on that as well. Not a big one. This is just something that I looked up earlier, just solely out of curiosity. I looked up the films that were released, horror films from 1996. I was surprised that one of them was actually on Robert, your top 10. Or I'm not sorry, I keep saying top 10. Your movie marathon list.
Which one? Was
The Frighteners was on there.
But there's some debate if that was. But that wasn't marketed as a horror film. That was marketed as a comedy film.
Okay, that's true. That's true too. There wasn't a lot of heavy. I mean, there's definitely some movies on there that you guys would know, but it's anyway. I just wanted to throw that out there. I wanted to kind of look and see if there were any that have kind of gone down in history as far as oh, that's a great movie or have any kind of cult classic status. It was pretty dim. Not much on there.
So, Matt, I know you have a lot to say, but before you get to that, I just want to say something. I'm the only one who was actively going to horror films when Scream came out.
Yeah.
At this point in time, we were at Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan, whatever Halloween was around that time, and I know H2O was the next year. I think the next year.
Yep.
98.
97. Or 98.
Which I think was a rapid answer to Scream. But at this point in time, horror movies were stagnant. The cycle was over. There was nothing original at this point. Scream was the movie we wanted because it turned horror films on its side, and also in a way, not in a way, it was meta. It was like the first mainstream meta horror film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, we could do that. We knew that right from the cold opening. Actually, let me rephrase it. It was the first post-Tarantino horror film. Because Tarantino and his movies, people were talking about movies, pop culture. I mean, Clerks as well. We were able to start talking about pop culture. We were in the first era where movies really heavily referenced other movies. Scream was the answer to that. And in the opening segment with Drew Barrymore, we knew this wasn't going to be the same horror movie. While it played on every freaking cliche, it also went the other way in the same sentences. So, Matt, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to like super bash on it because I actually really like the movie. I think that it spawned a lot of just crap after it. I will say that I don't agree that horror was like stagnant really. I think there were a lot of movies, like even in '96 alone, that were good. Like I can tell you that I probably like From Dusk Till Dawn more than Scream. That was
Yeah,
'96.
but From Dusk Till Dawn, first of all, when we say horror, we should say the slasher genre.
Okay, we can do that. Let me see what else we got here. Leprechaun 4 in space.
I don't think that was released theatrically.
It's a slasher if I've ever seen one.
Yeah. No,
Leprechaun went into space, but for me personally, there was a point where I would go to every horror film. I had to sneak to them, but I would go to every horror film that was out there. Like, I remember when Friday the 13th Part 2 came out. My friend and I bought a ticket for another movie. We went to Friday the 13th Part... We snuck into Friday the 13th Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
When my mom picked us up from the theater, she never told me that she saw the movie already that we were going to see and started quizzing us.
Oh, shit.
I got in so much trouble.
I have a similar story, but not nearly as cool of a film. me and two of my friends, we were somewhere around 14, 15. I can't remember exactly. But we went to the theater and we purchased tickets for whatever, PG or PG-13 film major one was playing, and we snuck into End of Days.
I'm sorry.
You guys remember that Arnold Schwarzenegger?
With Arnold, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we got caught, and they kicked us out.
Between my gun and your religion, I'll take my Glock 9mm.
Even funnier, I've never seen the whole movie.
You're better off. I didn't know that movie was R-rated. I thought it was like PG-13. But going back to it, Matt, you got to think about going to the theater at that time. We'll go with Friday the 13th. By the time we got to Jason Takes Manhattan or Jason Goes to Hell, which I think was after Scream, every movie was beginning to feel the same. Or in the case of the Halloween films, they strayed so far from what Michael Myers was. Oh, he was possessed by a demon from a cult.
So are you likening it more to like the long running franchises got stale or horror in general?
I think both. And I think when you mentioned From Dusk Till Dawn, that was a bright spot in horror films. Now, I think one of the things, in my opinion, that ruined From Dusk Till Dawn was they revealed the vampires in the trailer.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have done that. They should have been marketed as a film by Quentin Tarantino where they take people hostage, that when you go to see it, you're like, this is messed up. But it was a Tarantino film.
Yeah.
I mean, Scream, from what I remember, the trailers were, it was basically key moments from the cold opening with Drew Barrymore.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, in horror films, it had people who would go on to be really good actors in them. They weren't established. As far as I can remember, Scream was the first one where the entire cast was established actors. Neve Campbell Neve Campbell just came off of The Craft. She was the star of Party of Five. Rose McGowan was in Jawbreaker. Or was Jawbreaker after? She was in the Doom Generation. David Arquette was already a star. Courtney Cox was on the biggest sitcom of the time. Matthew Lillard, Skeet Ulrich were in stuff. I can't remember what, but I mean, I knew who both of them were. And then
What about
Matthew
Jamie Kennedy?
I think this was Jamie. This was the first time I knew I ever saw Jamie Kennedy in anything. But also, I mean, you had a very inventive script. Like I was watching it yesterday, and I'm sorry, rewatching it yesterday, and I knew every beat of the movie, but I was so into it. Like, again, that opening scene with Drew Barrymore of when she is getting killed and her parents had just pulled up in the house. You've never seen that before in a horror film. Because usually the kids are on their own doing stupid things. The dumbest thing she did was pick up the phone.
Yeah, I also love the setup to the film as well, because I think it does a really good job of setting up what kind of film you're going to get into. You know, with them mentioning, you know, just the whole tagline, what's your favorite scary movie? The kills in that first segment are brutal, man. Like whenever, you know, the boyfriend gets gutted in the backyard, and the whole terror thing too of like, you know, guess which door I'm at. I mean, it is such a this is one thing I wanted to throw out just for argument's sake, like not necessarily like an angry argument, but just to discuss, like, is this movie, I think script wise, Scream is like truly, as you stated, a very original film. It's taking everything that we know and just sort of, well, flipping the script on it. But it's also just, again, using all those tropes just sort of to its advantage. So is it really that original, or was it just timing that makes it? Because I love Scream, but I can also see like the, you know.
I think the answer to your question is yes. I think it's all of the above. I think that movie was released at the perfect time and re-energized horror films. I will also say it ruined horror films, because everything we got then, like before, a lot of these horror films were not like the centerpiece of the studio. In fact, I'm going to probably guess a lot of them had no studio meddling at all. But as soon as you have the hottest stars of Fox, the WB, the UPN, the ABC, NBC, CBS, and all of a sudden when they were just making money hand over fist,
Nick at Night.
Yeah, exactly. You had more studio meddling in there. And then you got, all right, we got to have Scream 2, we got to have Scream 3, we got to have Scream 4, we have to have I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine, the remake of My Bloody Valentine.
Urban Legend.
Yeah. They all...
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I said that. And I still know what you did last summer. with Jack Black in Jamaica.
Those are some films I need to revisit, but I digress.
They're not good films.
No, I remember. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I did a rewatch of the first one, not like too long ago, probably like within the last year. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like, well, it didn't really take long for me to realize what it was that I liked about it when I watched it when it came out. It was boobs and Jennifer Love Hewitt. That's what I liked about that.
All right. Scream did something that a lot of the other horror movies did not do. There was no nudity in it.
Absolutely.
When you saw something like Friday the 13th, Halloween, you knew you were going to see boobs and blood. This just gave us blood.
I did forget just how I know he's kind of a fan favorite, so I don't want this to come across in the way that like I've never appreciated him. But anyway, Matthew Lillard was so perfectly casted for that role. I love him in this film. It's just like just so unhinged, and I just I don't know. I think from the films that we've seen from him after that and stuff like, I think that's just kind of part of who he is. He just seems like kind of a crazy guy, and I like to believe at least that the director and everything was this, Wes Craven in this discussion was just sort of like, just kind of do you, but here's your lines, Um, I mean, I could be wrong, of course, but
I have a question. Did Stu die?
Probably, yeah. I feel like he was electrocuted to death.
yeah.
Okay, there's
Oh,
theories.
also, since this is kind of a movie about movies, do you think? Sorry, I'm just so glad you mentioned that because I made a mental note of it last night. Do you guys think that was in any way a callback to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, when they go to purchase the new TV off the black market? Which I'm sorry, the only reason that one sticks out to me is that honestly is like one of my favorite kills ever. I love that scene.
I haven't seen Henry in probably a decade, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there are theories online that Stu is not dead. That he's
So this is like fan fiction that you're
that
talking
he's
about?
gonna, that he might be in Scream 6.
So, okay, so I have not seen the new one. I'm assuming he is not in that one.
He is not, though.
Okay.
No.
His sister's kid is.
So
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That takes me kind of back to what we were talking about before, like,
But no,
you know,
they established in the first movie that he had a sister.
yeah, but just kind of the
That's
like
right.
unnecessary sequels. Like, we're the big like shtick of this movie is we're led to believe it takes place like in the real world. You know, all of these real movies exist in this real world, and it's like, you know, how does this same thing keep happening to these same exact people over and over again
So
with like different family members popping in?
so yes, those are the problems I have with Scream 2, 3, and 4. I think I adore the new Scream movie. I think much like the original, it had something to say. And it had its whole thing was about the requel. and how bad franchises have gotten. That's, I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but that is the whole thrust of what the new Scream was. It took on the staleness of franchises and the requel.
I need to rewatch it. That's all I can say about the new one. I kind of went in with like a bad taste in my mouth though because of the trailer. You guys remember that there was, I think it was towards the beginning of the trailer where David Arquette is asking Nev Campbell, like, "Do you have a gun?" And it's almost like this like action movie type of response, like, I'm
Yeah, I remember that part of the preview.
again. I don't know why
Sidney Prescott.
Yeah, Sidney Prescott. Of course, I have a gun. I'm like, fuck.
You know what? If you were attacked by a crazed Ghostface killer on 4 separate occasions over the span of 20 some years, I too would ask you if you have a gun. I would also I would also want to be nowhere near you. like
I should mention I liked the movie. There's just a lot of details that I don't remember. I only watched it in the theaters. I haven't watched it since. So
the first time I watched it on Paramount Plus, I didn't like it. And then I ended up buying it on 4K because I'm a fucking completist. And I watched it again, and I'm like, all right, this might be my second favorite Scream movie.
See, I don't remember. I own all the sequels except for the newest one. I just haven't watched them in about a year or two. I really can't remember. The story starts to get a little convoluted to me with like, Cotton Wary and I'm his fucking grandfather's nephew, twice divorced, and I'm just like, what?
I thought the third one was the most unnecessary, where the killer was Sydney's then unknown half brother, who was out to get revenge, and he was the brains behind Billy and Stu.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Now, speaking of like reveals in films, I love when you kind of see like all of this come, Billy and Stu's plan coming, and they've got, Sydney's dad duct taped up in the closet, who's been MIA this whole time. So keeping in mind, we're all still kind of like, is he part of it somehow? And that whole scene where Skeet and Matthew, sorry, I can't say Skeet seriously, but they're stabbing each other and shit. I mean, it's. I just thought it was wonderful. I loved it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: you're thinking throughout the whole movie. All right, first of all, it's Skeet Ulrich, who is the perfect villain character. He's like the poor man's Jared Leto. Or is Jared Leto the poor man's Skeet Ulrich? But no, I mean, here he is. He's just a guy you really want to punch. All right, you think he's the villain. Then Ghostface comes in and stabs him. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh shit, I was wrong. And then he comes downstairs all bloody, looking like he's about to die. Sydney's like, don't open the door. He opens the door, and then he turns fucking heel. And then their explanation, which, okay, her mom was sleeping with his dad. She abandoned him. And this fucked them up. And I'm gonna guess in the year after they killed Sydney's mom, they were just getting more and more insane.
Yeah, I have an issue with that reveal. Well, I guess not an issue, but kind of just like I have a couple things written down. I have a full page of notes about this movie, and we're actually crossing some stuff off, so that's pretty good. Okay. So with the reveal, I thought one of the good parts about it was, first Billy kind of goes through it, and he kind of just says like, your mom was a slut, so we killed her, kind of deal, kind of like real vague, and you're kind of just like, that's kind of mean, Johnny. She's just doing her thing, and then and then Billy like kind of goes into it in further detail, like, about his dad and everything. And the camera cuts over to Stu, and it really looks like Stu like never knew that part. So I thought that was really good, but at the same time, it's kind of like, why is Stu so invested in this whole thing?
So I took it almost as, are we left to wonder, is this just them making up a plot as they go? Like, are they just firing off like, oh no, we did this, and it was because of this? And it felt to me, and I still go back and forth on it. I don't really know which way it was intended, but to me, it kind of, you can see it one of two ways of like, whether he is being truthful and just, Stu's kind of left in the dark about it, or you can see it as he is just kind of creating a plot for why they're doing what they're doing.
Right. Or there's number 3.
Ooh, it thickens.
That Billy was never going to let Stu survive this thing.
Yeah, could be.
I mean, it was basically hit over our head was when you stab me too deep, I think I'm going to die. I feel like I'm dying. I mean, a master villain doesn't keep any loose ends.
I love him on the phone with Sydney after that. Like, this is his man. He's just, hello? Did you really call the police? Oh, it's great.
I actually like that. That's I like that.
What else are in your notes, Matt?
Some of them are just kind of thoughts. Some of them, like very beginning of the movie, the Dimension logo comes across, and I always get sad when I see the Dimension logo because that was like when I was first started to get big into like collecting DVDs, and I felt like every time I saw that logo come across, I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be a good one."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of like, for some reason I thought that they had started taking those out of there, but I saw it come across on the new 4K they put out, so just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
I remember, so when this came out, I was just entering my first year as a teenager, 13 years old. So I was not allowed to go to the theater to see this, but I remember when it was released on video, this was kind of the first movie that I can think of where it was a real big like word of mouth kind of thing. Like, oh, did you see like Scream? And everyone would be like, yeah, this was so scary because it's like it could actually happen. And I don't remember ever experiencing like that with a movie before, where like everyone on my block was like talking about like, oh, you got to see this. Did you see this yet?
All right. I just gotta say this movie could never actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no 17, 16-year-old kid could come up with a plan this good without leaving any clues and or framing someone as perfectly as Billy and Stu frame Cotton.
Yeah. Yeah. Cross that one off. So yeah, I guess kind of like with the whole, it like the motive seemed they just wanted revenge for Sydney's mom, but like why kill everyone else? Like why kill Drew Barrymore?
They kind of explain it. Drew Barrymore's character went out with Stu, and there was a little bit of dialogue where
I do remember that. Yeah,
I thought she broke up with you, and then he kind of brushed it off.
Yep. Yeah. Didn't you guys used to go out? Yeah, for like a week, I think is what he said, or something like that, or a second. I can't
they're
remember.
Both just kind of little revenge boys.
I think by this point they are both so gone.
Yeah,
they just don't care.
Oh, go ahead.
Alan Moore wrote a really good comic called Miracle Man, and there was a evil character in there called Kid Miracle Man, who went evil. Like they were kind of like Shazam, where they had a magic word. In fact, basically they were the British version of Shazam. After Shazam stopped being published, they created their own version of it, and we find out that these superheroes, these superheroes never really existed in the real world. They were real, but all of their adventures from the 50s and 60s were basically virtual reality. When they came into when they were taken out of it, and the British government tried killing them, only one of them died. One lost his powers for about 20 years, and the other never turned the powers off. And basically there was a line in there where he never realized that the world that they were in was imaginary. And I think Billy and Stu by this point consider themselves characters in a movie where there would be no repercussions for what they did.
Which is a cool angle to look at it, because absolutely, because the film, we obviously know who like the film buff is in the film because of Jamie Kennedy, right? So that's kind of a good angle on it, that like he's not the only one,
But I mean,
especially with their confrontation in the video store when Skeet and Matthew, I'm going to say Skeet as many times as I can, whenever they are talking to him in the video store. But like they kind of contradict what he's saying. Like, well, what about what would make this? What, blah, blah, blah.
But here's the thing. When Skeet sneaks into Sydney's room and he's having the talk about The Exorcist, how he was watching it on TV and was edited for television, it seemed like all these characters had one thing in common, that they were the first generation to totally grow. They were the video store generation. They were the first ones to grow up with it. And of course they would think things this way because they had access to movies that the previous generation didn't have until later in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
like they were going to Blockbuster probably from the time they could walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of going with that. Something else I had noticed. I think the thing that like kind of makes this movie like the scariest part about it maybe is I feel like this was the first horror film that um used cell phones, I think. So I feel like that kind of like,
Oh wow.
elevated it to a level because, before like someone's calling you on your phone, you're like, oh, they're at least like a house away, they're at a payphone down the block, or they're like somewhere else. But now the killer can be like literally anywhere. He can be in your closet talking to you on the phone, and you won't even hear him somehow. Um,
That's a
Yeah,
great point.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And
so
also,
I
and like a modern take on, the callers, the calls coming from
yeah,
inside the house.
hmm
That's cool.
um,
I didn't even
yeah,
think of that.
I don't know if it was the first because cell phones had been around since the 80s,
hmm
but I think it might be the first where the cell phone was a major plot point.
yeah, yeah. I thought that was I felt like that added a lot to it.
Because
Uh,
when this movie came out, I did not have a cell phone at this time.
yeah,
Mhm.
me neither.
Well,
I
you were
think I got one
13
like
years
10
Yeah,
years
same.
later. Yeah, that's also true.
But no, I mean, they weren't. I mean, they were. I remember my dad had one for business, but they weren't something that was mainstream. Not really
hmm
until like 99, 98.
Yeah.
And then you had limits on how. Oh, you got 400 minutes. You must be rich.
That'll be $10,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, you never went over on your cell phone.
Well, one thing I wanted to discuss as well. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Let me retract. Matthew, do you have any more notes on your page?
I got like still half a page left, but go ahead.
No, no. Go right
No,
ahead,
we
man.
could
I'm actually
let's
kind of. Well, I'm enjoying kind of firing
uh,
through them. All I wanted to ask was like, when speaking specifically of slashers. Now, I'm not saying that there haven't been. I haven't even racked my brain about it. I purposely turned it off until we had this discussion. But I can't really think of like any major modern day slashers since Scream that weren't already a part of another franchise, or you know what I mean.
hmm.
Like we've had Texas Chainsaws, which I guess is sort of a slasher film.
Hatchet.
Hatchet was pretty good. Hatchet was
Uh,
good.
I haven't seen it, but I know there are two of them. The Terrifier.
Terrifier 1 was good. Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen
I haven't seen the second one. Yeah.
it. I know they're out there, but again, my problem is when I see movies, I want to see something that is original. I want to see something that makes me think, and I want to see something that I think might be better than what came before it. And in my opinion, I don't know if that exists. Again, I haven't seen Terrifier. I've seen Hatchet. I think it's okay.
Which it has several sequels. I've only seen the first entry.
I've seen the first two, and then I just stopped caring.
Well, I don't want to get off the topic too much, but I do want to mention because this did cross my mind today when watching Barbarian. Like, I think that there are some. Okay, I think this is the best way for me to put what I was going to say. I love Ari Aster. I love Robert Eggers. I think they've proven themselves to be great directors. Jordan Peele, I'll throw in there too, right? But then you get, and I know we've already discussed these films, but Ty West's X and Pearl, I thought they were fucking brilliant. And now I watched Barbarian today, and I'm like, holy fuck! And it's like it's cool because I think that was a very Barbarian. I'm specifically talking about was such an original take on how to bring in modern aspects into a classic fucking horror film and have all these elements that everyone's afraid to touch anymore. I'll even throw Malignant into this conversation. Like I think it's coming back, man. I hope at least. I just want to throw that out there that I do think
No,
there's some really original films coming out.
There has been, but I mean, there's the Babadook, which I think is a great horror film.
I love Babadook. Yeah, that is also
Babadook.
the woman who directed that. I have The Nightingale is the only movie I've ever tried to watch and had to stop due to content.
Huh.
It fucked me up so bad.
There's one.
I will finish it one day, but God.
There's one coming out on October 28th on Amazon Prime that I'm looking forward to. Run, Sweetie, Run.
Not familiar.
I think it might be a vampire movie, but I'm not sure. It's about a girl who goes on a date with a guy. She goes in his house. Something bad happens, and he's like, "We're gonna play a game. If I catch you, you have until the morning. If I catch you, you die. If not, I let you live." And the trailer just looks intense. I'm like, why can't this be released this weekend? Because I'm going to talk about the end of the show, but let's continue talking about Scream.
Yes.
Because
Sorry.
it's making me like movies again.
I'll just go with the next one. Anyone else get a like huge crush on Nev Campbell in the 90s?
Yeah, she was on Party of Five. She was like the sexy sullen sister. And then she was in The Craft, where she was like kind of gothy, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was definitely
She was my
one of
first
mine.
like big crush, and I remember my mom like deflating it because she was like, "Oh, she's got big teeth," and I was like, "Fuck you, mom." Oh boy.
I just like to imagine she starts to say that like, yeah, she's got really big, and you're like, I know, and then she's like teeth, and you're like, oh.
So I have a funny Nev Campbell story.
Oh wow.
I'm
Okay.
listening.
I don't know what she was doing in Detroit, but she was in Detroit, and we all ended up at a rock show that she was at the Magic Stick. And my buddy was really, really drunk and went up to her and started saying how shitty of a show Party of Five was and how it might be the worst thing on TV. And she's like, "But you watch it, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And then he continues dissing it. And then one of our other friends like, "Dude, she won."
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was just there trying to look smooth. I did not look smooth.
You probably looked cooler than you think you did.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Sitting there sipping your vodka soda.
Yeah.
It would have been a PBR.
Oh,
I
no,
probably
there
was
you go. The
drunk.
bad boy look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a bad boy. All right.
I listen to bands you've never heard of. Come home with me.
Obviously, she listened to them too, along with the 200 other people that were there. I know the band. I know it wasn't Ted Leo and the Pharmacists, but for just story's sake, I'm going to say it was Ted Leo and the Pharmacists.
I watched them open up for Against Me in downtown Disney when I was on a Disney trip one day. One time.
I thought, and this because this show took place many years later. They had their song "Me and Mia" or whatever, and they're like, "How many of you came to hear that song?" And almost everyone in the audience was like, "Yeah." They played it. You can go home now. I thought that was pretty cool. All right,
It would have been funny if they just started packing up their instruments and
All right, we're out of here.
All right, Matt. What's next on your list?
This one is just kind of something weird I noticed. Do you think there was part of the storyline they cut out where Sydney was supposed to be deaf? Because I saw on her like computer program that she kept using, it was like I forget what it actually said at the top, but it was like software for like deaf calling. Like that's what she used to call 911. You remember that? when the killer was in the
Yeah.
house and
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think that
Yeah.
would have been a very heavy story shift.
yeah.
I took that as like deaf, meaning like leave the call untraceable or something, or like, you know, kind of like do you know what I'm saying? Like when you would call someone and it wouldn't show your number. I don't know.
That's star six
Okay.
seven, obviously.
Roberts is like, no, Brian.
No, it said at the top it was for like I thought it was just like something you use for emergency contacts because you can't use the phone if you're deaf. So it's like you use this program to
Okay.
Maybe maybe she had a family member that was, but I am looking through the internet and there isn't anything about that.
Okay. I guess I just have terrible ideas.
Hold on.
No, I like the
Here it is.
attention to
Here it
detail.
is. 18 details you probably missed in Scream.
Ooh.
Henry
you-
Winkler.
Oh yeah, Sydney. All right. Sydney's method of contacting emergency service uses technology created largely for people who are deaf. When Sydney's being attacked in her house, she contacts the police via her computer. She types out the emergency message using a teletypewriter, TTY, which is most commonly used by people who are deaf to make phone calls. Since users on both sides of the conversation can type out their message instead of speaking out loud, it's also apparently a great tool if you don't want to draw attention to yourself while there's a killer in your house. So nothing about her being deaf.
No, so
And-
maybe she used it after her mother was murdered and she was
Maybe.
like
Yeah.
traumatized or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Did you guys notice that they kept talking about Sharon Stone like 4 times?
Yeah, because probably every boy in that age range saw Basic Instinct and jerked off to her 100 times.
Yeah, they brought up Basic Instinct. They brought up like Gail was like, your mother's death was the hottest story since Sharon Stone the year before or something, and they brought up something else with Sharon Stone, and I was like,
Oh, it was
why are they-
Stu, and your mom
Yeah.
would know Sharon Stone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, but that kind of leads me into my next thing where it's, do you think it's like cringy when characters have lines that kind of like, I can think of in this one where the girl that Rose McGowan plays, she's like, somehow Freddy Krueger gets brought up and she's like, something
Wes
like
Carpenter?
the first one was good, but all the rest of them sucked. Like putting lines like that in movies where it's like, oh, look at this thing I just said. Do you get it?
She called that director Wes Carpenter.
Yes, Wes Carpenter. Yep.
But also, I'm pretty sure that was just an Easter egg to who directed the film. Also, the janitor was named Fred and looked like Freddy Krueger.
Looked like Freddy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like whenever I hear that in just like any movie, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I just don't like it.
Feels like low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I had no problem with it. I mean, if you go into the other Scream movies, they create a film franchise all their own called Stab. Based on the Woodsboro. I mean, the cold opening in 4 is just different cold openings from the Stab movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Getting down to the end of my list here. Billy Loomis. I always have read things that everyone is saying, if you're a horror fan, you knew Billy was the killer from the start because they gave him the last name Loomis. And it's like the only name in the movie that is tied to other horror films.
True, but as someone who loved horror movies, still does, I thought he was the killer until I thought he wasn't the killer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say
point.
something similar because this one with it playing with the audience as much as it does and playing with the genre as much as it does. I do think they were throwing little things in there to kind of lead you purposely in one direction and then to sideswipe you, you know, because again, I mean, I don't want to rehash, but like you've got a film that is totally setting you up for like, oh, let's take the tropes of earlier horror movies that we've all seen a million times before. And sometimes they take you there and sometimes they don't. So yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me. But.
I mean, what you didn't realize is we never, at least I never considered the two killer theory.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until that point, it hadn't been done.
Yeah, nothing I can think of.
I mean, the scene, again, after they had sex, and Ghostface comes in there and stabs Billy. You're like, holy shit. I did think something when he came down the stairs. Mm-hmm. But, again, I didn't want him to be the killer at that point. I didn't want it to be in that direction, but...
Which this, again, would go back to what Matthew was saying, too, with the inclusion of the cell phone and it playing such a significant role in the movie. Like, they could communicate with one another to terrorize Sydney or whoever, you know?
No, definitely, but... Again, sitting in the theater in 1996, when most people at that time still did not have cell phones, you didn't consider it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't meaning that as in, like, taking away from what you were saying. I was adding it to the conversation. Like, yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Like, the cell phone does play a huge role.
Yeah, but again...
And it's something I didn't think about at the time.
I mean, historically, again, at that point in time, we still lived in a landline society.
Mm-hmm.
So... I mean, they're talking about things like cloning cell phones, and I'm like, how the fuck do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Billions, you are geniuses.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to clone a cell phone. That's why I'm not in the CIA.
Yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I'll harp on, and it's kind of, like I said, I do really, really like this movie. I've watched it a ton of times. But I think that what it did to horror films after did it because I think, you know, essentially this is a horror film that is a parody film that tries to take itself seriously. And I think is kind of, I don't know. It's kind of the only thing that kind of takes it.
I wouldn't say it's
down a little bit.
I wouldn't say it's a parody. I think Scary Movie is a parody. I think with
but I think this is a parody of the horror genre, though. I mean, it's.
I think it's meta. I wouldn't say it's a parody. Parodies are funny, and yes, there were some funny moments in here. But one thing we can all say is that the kills in this movie were fucking gruesome. Mm-hmm. I mean. The death of Drew Barrymore was gross. Rose McGowan in the garage. The guy, the cameraman getting his throat slashed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were scary, and I'm watching it again. I watch it every year, and I forget how bloody this movie is.
Yeah. I always forget about the Drew Barrymore's boyfriend who just gets like disemboweled right on the patio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, guys. How many Ghostface would you give this movie, Matt? Let's start with you.
You know, it's a pretty high one for me. I don't have any huge issues with the movie itself. I really like it. I think it did some, I don't know. I don't want to say like damage to the genre afterwards. I just think it had.
but here's the thing. Of course it's going to do damage because everyone is going to try to replicate it. Mm-hmm. When Halloween came out, we got more slashers than we ever wanted or needed. Mm-hmm. Or in Italy, when the Birth of Crystal Plumage came out, we got more giallos than we wanted or needed. the movie industry is built on fads.
Mm-hmm.
And when they see something made money, everyone's going to try to do it. As I said at the beginning of it, the worst thing Scream did was it made horror films mainstream because it started putting A and B list stars in it instead of people who might one day have a career.
Yeah. Yeah, I have another question that I'll ask after we do our ratings, but relating to that. But I'm gonna go 4.25.
Okay. Brian, what about you? How many ghost faces are you giving this one?
I was going to go with about a 4.5. I genuinely love it, and I love it honestly because of discussions like this. Like, how many films are there that have, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I'm going to say like interrupted, the genre that people are still discussing to this day. Like, well, is this the movie that shifted everything? And I think there's a lot to say for that. Now, as a film for itself, or as itself, I adore it. Every time I watch it, I find myself really engaged with the characters and really engulfed in the story, even though I know exactly where it's going. A lot of these films where, your killer is exposed, some of them don't really have a lot of rewatchability. I think the acting in this and the script itself, like, really keep me coming back to it. I do love the kills. I love how it's, I guess, like, the first term that comes to mind is it's so like teeny bopper, but like it just knows how to do it right. It's bloody, it's violent, it is a hard R rating. I love the fact that it's got all these A-list actors, tons of profanity. It doesn't rely on nudity, and that's fine. I know for whatever reason that's kind of a deal breaker for some people. Doesn't bother me. We have tons of movies like that, right? And this one, I think, really, really just kind of brought it back for that time. I think that we needed a good slasher in the '90s, and I think this delivered. Yeah, the only reason I'm not even going a full 5 is just because I do have some, some wiggle room with, like, well, fuck, is this the reason I don't get any more slasher movies, like decent slasher movies, or not? That's the only reason I'm knocking it down half a star there, but or half of a ghost face mask, whatever you said. I love it.
I'm giving this one 5 ghost faces. I mean, after watching it again yesterday, every time I watch it, I forget how much I loved it, and it has a near perfect script. And one thing it does so well, it humanizes the killer. Mm-hmm. I mean, Michael Myers is just this face. Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy, they're all unstoppable forces of nature. These killers were flesh and blood, and they died, which is also the greatest fault of the series, of them trying to figure out new ways to bring Ghostface into it. But yeah, I think the legacy of it is the downfall of what Scream is, and how every film tried so hard to replicate the first one. I think the only successful one that really did it was the 5th. But I think this is a near perfect movie with great acting, great beats, a very well crafted script. And I know Wes Craven is known for Nightmare on Elm Street, but I think this movie is his masterpiece. If they didn't make any others, I think this film would probably be considered one of the greatest horror films of the 20th century.
I want to comment on one thing you said there, just very briefly. But I was actually talking to, my wife Rachel about this earlier, about one of the reasons I think Scream is held so high is, like, when people think about horror in general, as far as like your major franchises, you just mentioned the 3. You think Nightmare on Elm Street, you think Halloween, you think Friday the 13th. Scream very much put itself out there as being a very successful franchise. I mean, it's I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, it made its mark. And, I think people would think of Scream before they would even think of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, other, little things like that. I think it is considered to be a very well-made franchise. I mean, hell, we just got a new one. I mean, that says something, right?
Yeah. And
so,
I mean, yeah. But also, I think 2, 3, and 4 were unnecessary. But
that's a discussion for another night.
Yeah. Also, I think we'll wait till next week to discuss my hatred of Family Portraits, a trilogy of America by Douglas Beck.
Okay.
But what so next week I want to pose a question to you guys. What horror movie would you remake, and how would you make it different from the original?
Okay.
And what movie shall we talk about? What shall be our discussion of the week?
I'm sorry. I think Matt had one more point to make about Scream.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. It was just a question, just kind of going off of how you said Scream kind of like, revitalized the like stale horror genre. Like I feel like these past couple weeks or these past couple years we've had a huge like resurgence in horror. Is there a movie that you think led to that this time? Like one film in particular, or just kind of?
No, I think we are. I think we are now in an era where movie theaters are trying to survive, and horror movies bring people in. I think right now there are too many horror movies out there, but that's just me.
What do you think, Brian? Is there anything for you, but we're kind of just the same?
I can never have enough horror, so I think it really just depends on.
Did you see Smile, Brian? Did you see Smile?
Okay, good example. No, and you know why?
It looks like shit.
It looks like shit, but you know what? This is why I push to people so much who even aren't into collecting. I will always mention first when something is available to pick up on physical format. Because there are so many of these films that are being seen by people for the first time that came out, 20 plus fucking years ago. There are outlets. I know not everyone's into physical collecting, but I do think it's important to kind of like push the market when available, because there are so many movies I buy that I have never seen that came out in 1970 something.
No,
do you know what I'm saying?
No, I agree with that. I agree. It's like we live in a time where, well, to be honest, even the video store age, a lot of these movies were sitting on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now what we have now is we're able to see them in their best possible format.
Sure. And I'm sorry, maybe I took that in a different direction than what you intended, Matt. But I am always happy that new horror movies are coming out. I love that they do get butts in the seats. I guess it's kind of confusing to me because even today, our friend Steve texted me and said, "Hey, I found a theater that's still playing Barbarian, and I'm the only one in here." I was seeing it at the same time on the East Coast with a packed theater. So I don't know if just different cities and regions are having different, turnouts. I don't know.
So our friend Steve lives in Seattle,
mm-hmm.
where it's not yet the full rainy season. People are probably still outside. And for us, it's getting cold. End of story. What movie shall we watch next week?
Okay. I'm sorry. Apparently we were boring Robert.
No, Robert is extremely tired. He had a long day today. And I had to host a comedy show with an audience of 4. And where a kid yelled out, and by a kid in his early 20s yelled, "You look like the bad guy from Toy Story 2."
An obscure reference.
I can't even think
I,
of it.
yeah,
Was that like the dentist? Who was it?
I've never seen I've never seen any of the Toy Story movies. All I
I'm
wanted to
thinking
yell
of Finding
back
Nemo,
was,
actually.
"You look like the kid who's gonna be shocked after I fuck your mother." Who was with him at the comedy show? But I decided
Straight
not.
Cotton Weary style.
What?
Said
No!
straight Cotton
I don't
Weary style.
well,
All right.
I picked Scream, so I think you guys should pick the next film. Unless you guys want to do Scream 2, I'm just throwing that out there.
No.
This wouldn't be good.
I think we've beat the horse on this franchise.
Okay.
I want to throw one out there, if you don't mind. Let's do the first Friday the 13th.
Oh God! Don't make me buy the 4K. I don't need to buy any more movies.
Brian, don't
I've
you
heard
have
the 4K restaurant.
Don't you
I
have
do. I do.
Just watch
But
the
I've been on
set.
a 4K kick, and I fucking.
No.
Do you guys? Okay. Well, let me ask you. Do you guys have the 4K of it?
No. I have the.
Okay.
I've got
I've
the
heard.
box
I've
set.
heard like such a mix on whether or not it's worth it. Some people say the UHD like is way too dark and fucks it up. I don't know.
I am done upgrading movies that I don't think are going to look that much better than the Blu-ray.
Yeah. No, I would love to discuss Friday the 13th.
I'm gonna warn you guys that if we do this, I'm gonna want to go through the whole series.
We can do it, but intermittently, because we are getting ready for the greatest November ever of Stackvember.
Yes,
true,
I
that's
have.
true.
I have held off because
Yeah.
of that. So okay.
All right. That does it for this week's Grindhouse Chic. Please hit subscribe, because once we hit 500 subscribers, and we might be a few weeks behind because Matt has been delaying putting up episodes because, I'm in grad school. Ooh.
It's still undergrad.
I'm an engineer, right?
I'm an undergrad. I'm paid way too much for college.
Did you see we went up to 47 now? We're only 3 away from your dance.
Oh my God. Have you been practicing?
No.
I mean, I know you send me those weird videos, but I didn't know if you had.
Those were meant for your wife. On that note, please hit subscribe. We will see you next week when we discuss the horror film we would remake and how we would make it different, and the original Friday the 13th. Be here or not, but please do. Bye.